How do you get research from the lab to the public? For Washington State University engineering researchers in the surging field of green hydrogen fuel, it took teamwork and patience. Welcome to Viewscapes, stories from Washington State Magazine, connecting you to Washington State University, the state, and the world. Hi, I'm magazine editor Larry Clark. In this episode, I talk with Ian Richardson and Eli Shoemake about the Protium Company, their startup that builds innovative tanks and filling stations for hydrogen fuel. In this episode, we also have a true WSU Coug love story and a conversation with WSU Vancouver microbiologist Stephanie Porter about symbiosis and positive relationships between microbes and plants. Green hydrogen fuel made from renewable energy, such as solar, wind, or hydropower, is rapidly taking its place among other sources to meet the world's energy needs. For the last decade, 3 alumni and researchers at the Voiland College of Engineering and Architecture were looking into ways to store, produce, and use hydrogen fuel. Their work culminated in the Protium Company. I talked with 2 of the founders via Zoom about how they moved their ideas from the lab at WSU into the public.
I'm Ian Richardson. I'm the CEO of the Protium Company.
And I'm Eli Shoemake, and I am CCO, or Chief Commercial Officer.
Can you tell me a little bit about Protium? What do you do, and what is your company?
So Protium specializes in liquid hydrogen technologies. Our initial products that we're developing are a novel liquid hydrogen fuel tank and a fueling station to go with that. The initial application is looking at the aerospace industry. We're currently on a project with Washington State University to develop the first liquid hydrogen powered drone that will be used for surveillance and reconnaissance. And that project is sponsored by the U.S. Army. So the third co-founder of Protium, Dr. Patrick Adam, actually developed a kind of novel tank configuration for storing liquid hydrogen during his graduate work. So the idea behind this is that you have this liquid hydrogen tank that we've incorporated heat exchangers into the walls of that tank, something that's never been done before and hasn't existed until now. And we're actually 3D printing this tank out of novel polymers, which had also never been done before. So this started as a PhD project looking at the feasibility of this, and we gained a lot of traction and interest from industry in this. So that led to starting up a company to commercialize this technology out of the lab.
That's pretty cool. It sounds like a great idea. Was the idea to commercialize there all along, build this technology, do this research, and then get it out into the world where it can be used?
It really kind of was. One of the unique things about this particular project is it really got sparked back in 2012 or so. The Hydrogen Lab was working on building a liquid hydrogen powered drone themselves. So at the time I was undergraduate at WSU and working with the Aerospace Club. We kind of helped with the lab to create this liquid hydrogen powered drone. And it was really just kind of a fun idea, kind of pet project of, it was something that people like the Navy and Boeing had been working on at the time. And we kind of said, hey, these big names are doing it. That's something that we can do. We have the expertise right here at WSU to do that same thing, maybe not on the same scale, but we have the liquid hydrogen expertise. We have people that can do remote controlled aircraft and know how to design aircraft, from undergraduates to grad students, all right here. So we did. We went and we flew it a bunch of times. Unfortunately, we never were able to fly that particular aircraft on liquid hydrogen. But what it did do is it attracted the attention of a Boeing subsidiary in situ who got involved in the project. And so from day one with this tank technology, it was really them saying, hey, what you're doing is cool, but can you take the next step and give us a hydrogen solution that we can use that's better than everything else out there? So really from day one, it was driven by a customer, coming to the university and saying, can you develop this solution? And when that solution looked like it was working out, that was really, okay, we need to start up a company. We need to be able to commercialize this and turn it, from the lab project that it is to something that we can actually end up supplying to Boeing in the end.
And so when Eli and Patrick were working on this liquid hydrogen powered aircraft at the time, I was actually in a totally different field working on fueling stations to help with the rollout of hydrogen powered vehicles in California. So we had, several different technologies we were working on that all had, viable commercial opportunities. And so, at some point you realize, hey, we're really onto something. We spent years researching this. There's actual application for this, in industry. This makes a lot of sense to start up a company and try to get this technology, out into the world and start selling it. And ideally, that's every researcher's dream, right? You want to take your research, from the lab to a commercial product that can go impact people's lives. And as graduate students, you'd rather make your own job than have to go find a job. So if you can do that, it's a win-win for everybody. And that's a big push. And WSU is providing a lot more resources to make that happen in the last couple of years too, because they realize that that's a big part of all the R&D that goes on universities across the country. A lot of it doesn't get a lot of support to push it to the next level, to get it out in industry, and we need to. I mean, we have to provide funding and business advising and skills for researchers to start commercializing products.
Well, that kind of makes me wonder too, what challenges did you guys face as you were starting to commercialize?
There's a lot of challenges with starting a company. First, being engineers, we have no formal business training. Didn't really know how you legally form a company except for starting Googling it. Get all the paperwork in place, and then you legally have a company, and high five and cheer, and then now what? So then it's the actual process of figuring out, doing your customer discovering, figuring out, what the actual needs are in industry, understanding your customer base. The business side is just as challenging as the technology side. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize starting new companies. They think I have this great idea, it's going to make a lot of money. I wish it was that simple, but it's been years of us, going to business accelerators, talking with advisors, honing in on a business plan and something that's has long-term sustainability.
Yeah, I think we were really fortunate in a lot of ways that we went through kind of the way we did. So the company was actually formed December 2014. So really beginning of 2015 is when we were a company and we could start doing stuff. But we didn't really start pushing and commercializing on this tank technology, for example, and really behaving like a real company until like 2018. So those first 3 years there, 4 years, it was really us teaching ourselves what we needed to know to behave as a company, operate as a business, and understand kind of what we needed to do in order to move from lab researchers to people operating a business. And we were fortunate about a couple things. One, that we had WSU's network and connections to get us engaged with business experience and expertise. A lot of people at WSU's entrepreneurship and business programs helped provide us with advice. We were lucky that WSU got selected as a NSF funded I-Corps node and went through that I-Corps program, which was invaluable to giving us a lot of experience in helping us hone down our ideas and find who our customer was. All of these things. But the other thing, just the fact that we were still students. I was a master's student at WSU. Ian and Patrick were both pursuing their doctorates, through a lot of that. So, we could come in, we could be students during the day and have our work done and then work on the business stuff, after hours. And it wasn't like we were sitting there, needing to make an income or needing to have some other thing going or really needing this company to work out right now. It bought us the time to figure out what we were doing so that when we were ready to go for it.
I've been doing a lot of reading about hydrogen as a fuel and the hydrogen economy. Seems to me you guys might have the right thing for the right time. Hydrogen seems to be having a moment. So what do you think? Do you think the prospects are good for you?
We hope so. It's taken a lot longer than we would have liked, but all the pieces are finally coming together. The technology is there. It's commercially, viable. The costs are coming down as we start to manufacture more and more of these, whether that's, fuel cells on, consuming hydrogen, turning it into electricity for powering vehicles or electricity, or the electrolyzer side for generating your hydrogen, getting hydrogen from clean resources. Especially right now with large renewable energy push and clean energy push, hydrogen is getting a lot of attention as an energy storage media. Right here in the Northwest in the state of Washington, we're putting in one of the largest PEM electrolyzers from hydroelectric power in the country. So that just got funded up in Douglas County. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more hydrogen vehicles in all aspects of our society.
Where do you see Protium going from here? What are your next steps?
So this summer, we will be doing a flight test on the current WSU project that we're out on. And from there, we're looking to expand to larger size vehicles on aerospace applications, so air taxis, electric aircraft, and then also starting to look at marine vessels too, and how we can scale our technology to larger vehicles.
And so what advice would the two of you have for other researchers or other people that might be thinking about doing a startup?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Tap into the resources that are available. Take advantage of the network and the resources that, your institution, whether that's a university or other startup community, take advantage of those resources and learn as much as you can and get advice from as many people that are willing to give it. Because there's no one right path to start up a company. It's different for every single company, every industry, every technology. So
yeah, I think that's great advice. You surround yourself with good people, and you'll end up going in the right direction. Find people that can help. Another thing is, I would seriously say if you want to go find people to help you get it along, I would not be able to do this by myself. And having Ian and Patrick along as, co-founders, the three of us work really well together. And I think it would be just a lot harder for even just any two of us to try to get it along. So find people that you like working with, get a good team together, don't be afraid to ask for help, and then go for it. And, it may or may not work out, but you'll never know until you try.
So I'm a teacher and I had the summer off. So I had gone to a early afternoon yoga class and I was coming back from yoga, and on my way home, I noticed a Tahoe in front of me that had a WSU trailer hitch.
I'm Adriana Janovich, Associate Editor at Washington State Magazine, and I'm here with two Cougs who didn't meet at WSU, but WSU definitely did bring them together.
My name is Jessica Stafford Harper. I graduated Washington State University in 2003. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education, and I'm a 7th grade teacher in Austin, Texas.
I'm Joel Harper. I graduated in 2003 as a psychology major. I work at Apple. Yeah, so I was driving on 2222, and this is kind of this scenic, windy road in Austin. It's a very pretty drive, and I remember it being a summer day, and I think my window was rolled up at the time, but just driving, and then I saw this car kind of zip up behind me, and I was kind of looking in my rearview mirror, and I'm like, oh, that car's really close. I'm like, huh. And then it kind of zipped up beside me and kind of like looked at me, and I look over, and I'm like, oh, this is a cute girl. Like, she's looking at me, like, wonder what's going on. And then she kind of zipped in front of me, and then I saw her Washington State sticker on her car. I'm like, oh, okay, so she went to Washington State. So we kept driving on 2222, and we met. We just happened the light to be red, so we stopped. It was like a minute later. We stopped and rolled down the windows, and she's like, "You went to WSU?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from Pullman, right?" Which is a very small town, 10,000 people, minus the students. So.
And then I said, I stopped. I kind of caught myself, and I said, "You're from Pullman?" And I said, "I'm from Pullman too." And I had lived in Pullman. Both of us were born in Pullman, and my family lived in Pullman until I was in 8th grade. And then we moved to Austin, Texas. And I went back to school to WSU for college. I was really caught off guard, but I didn't recognize him either. So without even thinking, I said, "Well, what is your name?" And he said, "Joel Harper." And again, without even thinking, I said, well, I've never heard of you.
Yeah, Pullman is so small, everybody kind of knows everybody, and especially, a similar age, you would think you might have heard the name before. But yeah, she's like, Jessica Stafford. I'm like, oh, I've never heard of you either. Like it's
So then the light turned and we went on our way, and I thought, that's so interesting. It's funny that, in just this quick encounter, I would meet someone who went to WSU, but also was born in Pullman.
So I was a little bit older. I went to Whitworth first, and then took a year off, then went back to Washington State and finished up. So there was a little bit of an age gap when we were younger, when she was still in Pullman, which kind of explains why our paths didn't cross at the time. But yeah, I remember the light was about to turn green, and I got shy, and the light turned green right before I was ready to ask for her number. And we're like, oh, okay, well then, I'm like, gosh, I'll probably,
Go Cougs.
yeah, I'm like, I'll probably never see this girl again. So I just like my Jessica Stafford, Jessica Stafford. And I said it over and over my head. And then I drove to a friend's house and wrote it down. And then it was a few days later that I found her online. I'm like, oh, there she is. I was very excited.
And the funny thing I think that we realize now is that throughout our lives, whether it was growing up in Pullman or being at WSU, there are many times that our paths probably crossed and we didn't know it. I have lots of friends who their big brothers are his friends. And, we have lots of family moments that we remember being in the same place at the same time. When Joel moved to Austin, one of the first things he did was go to a WSU versus University of Texas baseball. I happened to be at that game with my dad. It was 2 years before we met, but it was just another one of those times that we were in the same place at the same time and didn't know it.
It's funny, we kind of talk about when she moved to Austin, randomly, like that's when Austin started to come up just in my radar for completely different reasons. Just very drawn to Austin, the city, and really moved there as quick as I could after college graduation to find a job to move to Austin. But as soon as I did, I was very excited to be here. And then then to meet the Cougar in Austin was kind of one of those chance things that was pretty cool.
So you found her online. Did you reach out first? And then what happened next?
So I did. I reached out and found her. I'm like, hey, I'm the guy that on 2222.
He actually invited me to go wave the flag at one of the WSU games, but I don't have a really good, this isn't a good part of the story because I had a hair appointment that day, and I asked, how early do you have to get up to go wave the flag? And he said, oh, we're going to be up at 4 a.m. I was like, nah, I think I'm good. So he did it. I did not, but that was one of our first conversations.
Yeah, it took a minute for us to kind of connect. After that, it was maybe a year or so later that we actually got to meet for the first time.
How long did you date? And then how soon after that did you get married and all that?
We dated for about 2 years and we were engaged for a year. And then we've been married for almost 10 years. We'll be married 10 years in May. And it all went by really fast. I think I knew that he was the one. I think the first time we went out to dinner, I just thought there was something really special about him. And I felt like I'd known him my whole life. But at the same time, it was new and exciting. And I always feel very fortunate that I have someone in my life who loves Austin and loves Pullman equally, and that both are very important to us. And there's so many things that we don't have to explain to each other. We just know. They're, the uniqueness of Pullman and the uniqueness of WSU, we share that. And we had separate experiences, but definitely that same shared love.
Just inside stories and jokes of like we knew teachers that we had, right, or things like that, different small unknown Pullman facts if you didn't grow up there, that we always have that home base point of reference.
How often do you get back to Pullman or come back to the campus when it's not a pandemic?
So my parents still live in Pullman, and I have most of my family is still in the Northwest in Spokane or Coeur d'Alene area. So we try to go back about every other year to see my folks. But yeah, this pandemic canceled our trip for a family reunion. We were pretty bummed about that, but definitely excited to go back soon. And we have 2 young kids that they've been, so they've got a ride on combines in the summer in Pullman, and then, got to experience that at a young age, but we're certainly excited to take them to some games as they get older and talk about, how we, where we're from, which we're very proud of.
Do you guys still have the same cars, the same trailer hitch and that same sticker?
We have since upgraded the cars, and I think it's funny. Neither one of us have WSU stickers currently on our car. I don't know if it's because we, the rest is history. We don't need to meet anybody else from WSU. No, I'm just kidding. But I do laugh that I think that's a work in progress. We need to get something on our car to symbolize that moment.
I think that across many fields in science, one of the most exciting topics right now is understanding the impact of microbes on plants and animals.
That's Stephanie Porter, a microbiologist at Washington State University, Vancouver. Porter studies symbiosis, the association of two or more organisms. I'm Brian Clark, and Porter and her work are the focus of a feature story I wrote for the November 2020 issue of Washington State Magazine. Symbiosis is a big umbrella word. It spans all the way from straight-up parasitism to full-on mutualism. Porter wants us to stop thinking of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, the protists, and even viruses, as always being the bad guys. Microbes, she says, have a huge positive impact on plants and animals.
In particular, microbes that aren't just disease-causing pathogens, but microbes that regularly live in plants and animals and affect the physiology, the health, and the behavior of plants and animals in ways that previously were unrecognized. And there's sort of been a renaissance in this field. Understanding the human microbiome has fundamentally changed how we view medicine. And similarly, understanding the plant microbiome is fundamentally changing how we try to grow crops and plants that we depend on for our food, and how we raise animals for pets or for food. So there's this big theme in the field of biology around understanding the outsized impacts of these tiny, invisible little microbes that have their whole ecology within the host. And the outcome of these ecological interactions of these diverse microbial communities, we're understanding that the impacts are quite profound on their hosts. And if we truly want to understand things like medicine or agronomy, we need to start with the microbes and understand how that impacts all of these outcomes that we care about, like health and food production. For me, understanding that process is fundamental to so many of our society's goals, and is also just fascinating. We have wonderful new developments technologically that have allowed us to identify and to quantify the positions of these microbes on their hosts, and that lets us finally track them. So now we can sequence the genomes of these organisms, of these microbial organisms. We can use metagenomic sequencing to get a sense of the diversity of microbes that are there, of the kinds of functions they may perform, and their relative abundance. And so this is just this huge frontier right now. And I think it's a very exciting field that there's so much progress being made in.
Metagenomics is a way of sequencing the genomes of entire communities. You can take a drop of pond water, like we did when we were kids, but instead of looking through a microscope to see who's there, you use genomics tools to determine who's living in that pond. One of the questions Porter and her lab group are trying to answer is why there are so many different kinds of microorganisms in that pond, in your gut, or in the rhizome, the roots of a plant.
There could be so many different factors that develop diversity, and this is sort of one of the foundational mysteries in ecology, is for any organism what maintains diversity, or any level of organization.
For bacteria, diversity is really weird because they can kick out bits of their genome into the environment. And if another bacteria comes along, it can grab that bit of genetic material and just incorporate it into its own genome. It's like bacteria are this kind of superorganism capable of kitting itself out with the tools it needs for whatever environment it finds itself in. Serpentine soils are one of those environments. These are soils rich in heavy metals, normally toxic to just about everything, but not, it turns out, to certain kinds of nitrogen-fixing bacteria called mesorhizobia.
Bacteria can exchange adaptations, the genes that confer tolerance to different environmental attributes. They can exchange them in ways that other organisms don't tend to, because bacterial genomes are very fluid. So if one bacterium evolves a set of genes that lets it live happily in heavy metals, it can just pass that particular gene to other bacteria, and then those bacteria may be able to have the similar amount of tolerance. It's just so fundamentally different from how, mammals like us tend to evolve, where we rely on the slow process of mutations and natural selection, weeding out some variants of a gene versus another. I mean, humans don't have this capacity. And yet it seems to be fundamentally important for bacterial adaptation.
I try to imagine what it must be like to be a bacterium, but I always end up mixing metaphors. It must be like living in a gene soup, and the genes are like junk mail floating by. Most of it you just ignore, but then, hey, there's a coupon for a free pizza. Grab that. Or maybe it's like free money just floating around, and you grab whatever you need to be adaptive and useful. And once adapted, a bacterium can thrive on to reproduce in many other ways. What all this really makes me wonder is, what if Darwin's bulldogs were all wrong? What if it's not all about the survival of the fittest? What if the cooperationists have it right, and mutualism and sharing really are the way to thrive?
To read more about Porter's symbiosis research, Coug love stories, and hydrogen fuel, visit magazine.wsu.edu. Our music was composed by Greg Yazanitsky. Thanks for listening to Viewscapes.